Hi, this is Brenda with Luke's Sewing Center, and today we're going to learn about the Janome 15,000. Let's get started. Included with your Janome 15,000 is a great selection of accessories. This wonderful extension table for sewing, 5 different hoops for embroidery, including the free arm hoop for cuffs and collars, a knee lift, a special foot pedal with an additional accessory that cuts your threads for you. Here we have a fabulous accessory box with a little space for each of your feet, more accessories, and another shelf underneath for additional. In fact, there are so many feet that I'm going to ask you to refer to this page in your owner's manual, and it'll go through each of the feet, and what they're used for. Also included, of course, is your embroidery arm, and that'll be in the latter portion of our learning video. First of all, let's wind a bobbin. We've got our class 15 bobbin. I'm going to take the thread coming off the front of the spool. We're going to go through this notch, down, around, and then back. When I pass through the back here, I'm going to pull it slightly to make sure that there is tension on the thread. Coming across, I see here's my bobbin. The thread's going to go up through the hole in the bobbin. Put it on the bobbin winder. Click it over in place. And at that point, I'm going to wind my bobbin by touching the button here. And off it goes. And that's all there is to it. And there's a handy cutter here to cut your tail. Let's thread the Janome 15,000. I'm going to take the thread, go across the notch here, around and down behind the silver point, back up here in a U-turn. I'm pulling it to the side to put the silver, snick it into that silver notch. I'm dropping down below the first lower thread guide. It's going to drop into position. And then the second lower thread guide right here. And at that point, I'm going to lock my machine. Over on the control panel, there's a key. And when I touch the key, it's going to lock the machine, putting the needle in the correct position. I'm pulling the thread, what I call the alligator, through the alligator. It snicks into position around the back and cut. Simply touch the needle threader button and our needle is threaded and we're ready to go. Let's insert our bobbin. We're going to drop the bobbin. It looks like a P with a thread going off the left-hand side. Drop it into the bobbin case. The thread is going to go under the flange, around, and cut. Just that easy. Then we're going to replace the bobbin cover, and we're ready to move on to the control panel. The 15,000 has a great selection of stitches. You probably noticed them up at the top when we were threading the machine, but how do we get to them? We have a touch panel, control panel on the machine, and the way we get to the different menus is right here with the little house. So when I touch the house, it indicates utility stitches, buttonhole stitches, decorative stitches, satin stitches, some fonts, and then this is our techniques button. So let's look first at our utility stitches. Here we see just our regular straight stitching, our triple stitch, our overcast stitches. If I want to page through all the menus, you'll see it says page 1 of 37. I can touch the arrow and slide through to reach all the different buttons. But let's go back to our little house and take a look at the decorative stitch menus. As you can see, they're all by category listed. Let's look at the pictograph stitches. When we look at this, and let's scroll down one. In fact, I think, here it is, my elephant. Let's look at the elephant stitch. And the reason we picked this is for a couple of reasons. We see that this stitch is 9 millimeters wide. Well, I want smaller elephants. If I want to take any stitch and make it narrower, I'm going to touch the minus button. See how my elephants are getting skinnier? Now, here I've got 2.5. Some of the stitches allow me to make that stitch longer or make that stitch shorter. See how my elephant's getting shorter? But they're actually marching up the wrong side of the road. Right here, I can touch the button and it will flip the elephants horizontally. And now they're marching up that side of the road, but I want them to march down the road. And this button will allow me to change the direction vertically. Okay, so I can take any of those stitches and modify them to what I want. Now, if I say, oh, I kind of want to go back to the default, touch the default button, and that takes me back to the default settings. See, we're back at that 9 millimeter and that 2.5 for the length. We have a lot of great stitches on the machine. What if we could combine them? Of course we can. So what we're going to do is we are going to go to our decorative stitches right here, and we're going to choose our play stitches. Why? Because they're fun. When we go up and select the button with the heart, making a favorite stitch. So we're going to choose a series of stitches. So we're going to choose an umbrella, we're going to choose a mannequin, we're going to choose a shoe, because why not, and a coffee cup. Kind of silly, but we've got a series of motifs that now that becomes one stitch that we're going to stitch out on the machine. And in fact, we want to save that stitch. I can go right up here to the file folder, and we're going to save that stitch in the ordinary stitch file. And I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to call it, right here it says M2. I really don't like that name, so I'm going to touch the pencil, and I'm going to call that, I'm going to call it motif. So M-O-T-I-F. So now we've just named that stitch, touch OK, and there it is. All right. So now we've saved that stitch, and we want to stitch it out. Notice that the machine recommends a different foot. We had the A foot, but the F is our decorative stitch foot. We're going to go over here. I'm touching on the back of the needle column. That drops the foot. I'm taking my F foot, which is right here, and I can click it right into position like so, or I can lower the needle column however I would like. At that point, I'm going to take my fabric, and we're going to go ahead and stitch out this wonderful motif. All right. All right, so we're doing the mannequin. Then we're working on our coffee cup. We're working on our shoe. And when we're finished, we're on the last one. And while we're here, I'm going to show you one other feature that I think really is handy. And that is going to be our scissors. Touch the button, and it cuts our thread for us. So we've got our umbrella, our mannequin, our shoe, and our coffee cup, and then back, of course, to the umbrella. All right, we're under our house, and we want to look at the font. So let's touch the letters ABC, and we see, of course, our alphabet, but we also have some choices. When I touch this button, it indicates the different fonts that are built into the machine for me. We're going to choose the 9mm block font, and we're going to spell a name. So let's go with A for Alexis. X-I-S. All right, so now we have our words. We can see that we still are using our F foot. Let's go over here, and we're going to stitch that out in the large size. And here we go. All right, we're on the E. Now we're doing the X, I, and the S. All right, and it stops and cuts for me. All right, so we see Alexis's name. Turns out nice, very readable. It's good for name tags or little labels, but when we get into the embroidery, you're going to see some beautiful fonts that are built into the embroidery machine. There is another button under our little house, and that was our techniques button. And here we can see different ways that we would use the sewing machine for different techniques in sewing. Let's take a look at one of them. Let's look down here at the quilting button. When I choose it, I see another sub-menu indicating different variety of skills I can use for quilting. For example, this is a great machine for free motion quilting. When I touch the button, it offers me choices and is going to set the machine up for success for your project. All right, we have some hard keys as opposed to the control panel. Let's talk about those. This is our speed slider. To the left is slow, and this gives me my maximum stitches per minute. So you can change that speed. We know about the bobbin winding button. We've seen our needle threader, our scissors. This is for the presser foot up and down. This is our needle up and down position. So if I'm appliquing or want to stop with that needle down so I can pivot, this is where I go. This is my fix button. It will stop and put a knot on the underside of my project. My reverse button to lock in the stitches or to sew backwards. And of course my start and stop. We'll be using this button a lot in our embroidery. The other thing that we love about our 15,000 is this wonderful light. Gives me extra LED looms for greater visibility. How easy it is to see. Right, so now we're going to go into the Janome 15,000 embroidery mode. So we're going to get the machine set up. First of all, we'll turn the machine off. Then we're going to slide on our embroidery unit. I'm going to go to the back here, slide it across, and it will snick into position. So it's ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and turn the machine on. To further set up the machine, we are going to do a couple of things. Number one, we're going to change our foot. So I've taken off the ankle with our sewing foot and put on our embroidery foot. And it just bolts on right here with a little screw. The next thing we're going to do is tell the machine we're going to embroidery mode, and that button is right here. I get a little message. It tells me I don't have the embroidery open yet, the embroidery arm. Sure enough, we're going to say, okay. And when I'm reaching back along the side of the machine, there's a lever that I'm pressing down that releases the embroidery arm, and it will go perpendicular to the machine. It's asking if I want to resume the last pattern. We do not, so we're just going to hit the X. Now I'm presented with three choices: designs, fonts and lettering, and the edit screen. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select the design. So we're touching the daisy, and it's showing me designs I can choose from. I'm going to scroll down. You can see there are many pages of designs. I'm going to select this sweet little flower. All right, and there is our design. It indicates what hoop is recommended for that design. We see the little flower here. We'll come back to the screen in just a minute, but we're going to add another element to our embroidery. So to add another motif to our embroidery, we are going to go back to the house, select our editing grid, and of course we see the sweet flower, and now I want to add another motif. So we're in the grid, I go to the house, and what I'm going to add is some lettering. So up here, the first button shows us our choice of fonts, and Janome's always about choices. I've got a selection of fonts, and in fact, if I were to scroll down further, you see a couple of choices to make some monograms. We're going to go up to the script, and when I choose my font, it shows me my letters. I have the choice of whether I want the letters to go across or down on the design. The size, small, medium, and large, uppercase, lowercase, a trash can if I've misspelled, and then of course I can save a message if I'm going to want to reuse that script. So we're just going to go with 3 letters. We're going to say okay, and now we see the monogram and the flower, so I'm going to rearrange them. When I touch the design, there's a little light green box around the different elements, so that letters are here. The points of my compass allow me to move it up So let's go here. Now I'm going to touch the other motif, the flower. There's this nice little green box around it, and I'm going to use the cardinal points again to scoot it over and perhaps a touch up. All right, so we've chosen the designs that we want, and at this point, let's review some other items. So it's indicating I want to use the SQ14 hoop, which is 140 by 140 millimeters. If we wanted to change, this button allows me to choose another hoop. Of course, they're all listed. We're going to stay with that hoop. This, if I want to resize, so I say, oh, that flower is nice, but maybe I want it a touch bigger. I'm touching that button, and that's going to allow me to change the size of that motif, enlarge it by 20% or reduce it by 20%. So I'm just going to hit a couple of percentages just to illustrate. I'm going to say okay. If I want to duplicate the design, maybe I need more than one flower. I touch the button, and I've duplicated it. And of course, you know what the next button is. Okay, awesome. I've got the square around the design we're working. I'm going to touch the garbage can, and the flower is gone. Perhaps I want to cock the flower a little bit at an angle. Let's choose the whirligig button. At that point, I can choose to rotate it in 45 degrees or in 1 degree. So if I can go, let's choose the flower to change a little bit. And let's just rotate it a little bit so it's a little softer look. I like that. Let's hit OK. Perhaps I want the flower to be growing in another direction. I have choices here to take the design, and we've got the box around the flower. When I choose that button, it flips my design horizontally. And of course, as you might guess, I can flip it vertical. Well, that looks silly, so let's change it back. All right, down here, we're going to go to some other choices. All right, if we want to group our designs together, if we want to duplicate the design and make 4 of them, we're looking at the stitch out order. If I want to change the colors in the embroidery. All right, let's go back to our first set of options. I'm going to choose these letters here, and you'll notice that this button all of a sudden became lives. When I choose the letter button, it allows me to arc them. Okay, so you can see I did just with the 3 little letters. If I need to put them further apart or closer together, I've got some choices here to modify that text. We're going to go with that slight arc. There is another way to add an additional motif to our grid, and that is to take a design out of our USB. So on the side of the machine, I've inserted the USB. I'm going to select number 1, and I can see that I've got a variety of folders. And I'm just going to pick a design here. I think that looks like a cat. All right, now obviously that's silly, but I wanted to show you the process to pull a design from the USB. We know we've got the design. We know the green boxes around it. We also know there's a trash can, so I'm going to go ahead and eliminate that 3rd design. But I wanted you to see the 3 different ways to pull up a design. All right, so to embroider, we need to hoop our project. So we're going to take a piece of stabilizer, drop it into the hoop. We're going to take our project, which in this case is just a simple piece of fabric, drop it into the hoop. I'm going to take the insert, place it in the hoop here, then go to the corner and tighten it down, making sure that when it's tight, that this is tight like a drum, and we're good to go. Now we're ready to install it on the machine. So we're going to take the hoop, slide it through. This little knob underneath looks like a T. It slides into a slot on the embroidery arm. And then I rotate, and now we're good to go. Let's move on to our stitch screen. Let's look at the stitch out screen. So right here it indicates what hoop we have inserted on the machine. Of course, we've got our embroidery foot. We see the size of our design, and that's 118 millimeters by 81 millimeters, the metric. However, I want you to look over here on your machine. Remember, you have 2 rulers printed on the machine. So if I have something that's 118 millimeters, I'm going to go 50, 100, 10, 20. So I know that that design is about 118 tall. Okay, so it's an easy reference. I see that my design is 5 colors. The auto tension is set. The thread trimmer is turned on. We're going to be stitching at a speedy 800 stitches per minute. This design should take approximately 7 minutes to embroider. And right here we notice that the entire embroidery is a little over 3,000 stitches. Dropping down, we see the colors that make up the embroidery. And in fact, with these arrows, you'll notice the first color, which is green, is check marked. I can scroll through the different colors and it will jump to the position on the design where that color begins. So we see all of our colors. I'm going to go back, of course, to color number 1, which is green. In fact, while we're talking about color, let's go up here and review this button. We see the entire design. I see green. On some designs, it's more difficult to determine where that particular color will stitch. This button is a huge help. When I turn it on, only the portion of the design that's in the color checked appears. For something simple, it's child's play, but when you have a really beautiful design with maybe 20 colors, that helps. Let's turn that off for right now. Let's review some of the other buttons and choices on our stitch out screen. So we go up here and touch the button. It's going to list the type of thread and the number. This is an important button, and when I touch that, that gives me choices to baste my project to the hoop. So it will stitch actually around the design or around the edge of the hoop. And there are choices here to choose from. This button changes the position of the hoop. This illustrates the foot that we have on for embroidery. And this allows me to change the design just a little bit, a couple of degrees, if I happen to have hooped my project crooked. So we're going to go ahead and sew. So I've got the color number 1. I'm going over here. I'm going to touch the start button and let it start stitching. All right, we'll stop for just a moment so I can cut that thread tail. All right, so now we're stitching along and all of a sudden, the thread breaks. It happens. I'm going to stop the machine. We're actually pretending, of course, the thread broke. We look here and I see that I'm on stitch 126 of 3,000. So I would rethread the machine and I would back up, boop, boop, boop. Maybe 5, maybe 10 stitches to lock that thread back in and then start my project again. If I'm further along in the project or I need to run to Kroger's and turn the machine off and pick up again, I can page through the colors, we know that, but I also have the opportunity to select the little calculator and pick the stitch number and the machine will jump to that stitch number in our project and then of course I can begin again. Awfully handy. All right, so we'll let our machine stitch and we'll be right back when the design is finished. All right, so we've completed our green, and of course on our screen we can see that our next color is going to be our burgundy. The thread has been cut by the machine, and I might mention when we're talking about thread that we use embroidery thread when we're doing our projects, which we carry here at Luke's. We carry, of course, the Iris polyester embroidery thread, and we carry the Selkie rayon thread, both which are beautiful on our project. I'm cutting my thread up here so we don't drag the thread back through, and we're going to change our color. The one other thing that we want to talk about on thread is when we do embroidery, we use bobbin thread in the lower, for our lower thread. And bobbin thread is a 60 weight polyester thread. We do carry pre-wound bobbins for embroidery. And there are times when you may want to use the same thread on the top and on the bottom, but typically we use a white or a black polyester bobbin thread. All right, so I'll get this threaded up and we'll stitch our next several colors. All right, our design is finished. To remove the hoop, I'm going to reach in, untoggle the black knob, pull our project out. Look how pretty. Let's do a little bit of maintenance on the machine. In fact, we're going to open up our accessory case and grab a little brush to do some cleaning. The accessory case slides off the machine. I'm going to press this lever and pop the needle plate loose. In fact, it will come all the way out. And down here we see, of course, our bobbin, which I'm going to pop out, along with the bobbin case. At that point, I'd take my little brush that comes with your accessories, go in there and get any dust or little thread scraps. And as you can see, it does get dirty. Any of that dust in there, of course, can affect your machine and stitching. Make sure to get in there in all the nooks and crannies, especially where that thread cutter is. All right, to pop it back in, your bobbin case goes in like so. We're matching up the bobbin case colors. The machine comes with 2 bobbin cases. This happens to be the yellow. I'm going to match it with the mark there. I'm going to take that needle plate. I'm reaching back here to raise a pressure foot for a little bit of extra height. When I go to press down, you'll see this button right here. Give it a little bit of pressure. It pops into position and you're ready to go. Your machine is clean.